Indigenous African beliefs of nature. Respect the land and nature. Africa, the cradle of mankind, is home to many cultures across its varied geographic regions that practice a wealth of spiritual and religious belief systems. The indigenous belief systems have altered, and many traditions have been lost or replaced by the secular and religious traditions of immigrants and colonizers. Islam has had a strong influence in northern Africa since the 7th century, as has Christianity and especially sub-Saharan Africa since the 17th century. Indigenous African religious practices were based on oral traditions and on knowledge and customs, which are passed on during a wide variety of ceremonies and rituals during rites of passage and a range of community events. Some of the content of these ceremonies and rituals are secret, which combined with an oral rather than written tradition, made them especially vulnerable to change over time. As a result of all these influences and impacts, indigenous African belief systems and knowledge are being forgotten. People are giving up many of their traditional ways in favor of Western education, capitalist enterprise, new religious practices, and prioritizing the individual over their community. Isn't it ironic then that the global environmental crisis, which is particularly harshly expressed in parts of Africa, is resulting in a growing interest in traditional African knowledge systems and of how communities lived in a sustainable relationship with their environment? An introduction below into the traditional spiritual values attached to land and water gives some insight into a practical African conservation ethic. For Africans, religion focuses on the preservation of human well-being and the promotion of whatever enhances life on Earth. At a practical level, a healthy natural environment is acknowledged as essential for a healthy and harmonious life. The connection is also deeply spiritual. In traditional African societies, nature was regarded as a gift by a supreme creator god for the benefit of humanity, who believed that mankind was created at the center of the universe. Nature, however, is not a gift to abuse, and a host of nature spirits associated with specific animal and tree species and sacred forests, rivers, lakes, and mountains remind local communities of their need to respect the environment and to use it sustainably. Through responsible behavior, people were required to coexist peacefully with other people, other living creatures, and natural objects, and by so doing to ensure a harmonious and sacred web of life. Many rituals, taboos, and customs function to remind communities of the need for respect. Using traditional Chaga society in Tanzania as an illustration, when the weather was good, people felt they were in harmony with nature, their ancestors, and God. If there was drought, famine, or floods, then the Chaga believed their good relationship with nature, ancestors, God, and others had been disturbed. Traditional Africans focus on life on Earth as a member of a community, and spiritually they do not draw clear distinctions between the living and the dead. The dead in the form of ancestors remain part of their community and can intercede on behalf of the living to ensure the well-being of their family members and clan. Land ownership is a core value amongst Africans and is also linked to the extended family's link with their ancestors. God gave the land to each community through their ancestors, and they in turn have the responsibility to look after it for future generations. The placenta of a newborn was buried in the soil to connect the newborn with God, the ancestors, and their responsibility toward the land. Water as a source of life and spirituality is another core African value. Traditionally, water was recognized as both an essential life force and a source of strong spiritual power. Water spirits were believed to live in and protect water sources, as well as being the guardians of fertility, morality, and life itself. They can, however, be chased away by disrespectful actions or by social disharmony. Disrespect shown to them was believed to result in drowning, droughts, and floods. And if it was so severe that they left, this could result in the degradation of the water bodies or their drying up. The sacred role of water spirits goes beyond ensuring a respectful relationship with water. It is believed that the spirits of the water call individuals who have been chosen to become traditional diviners and healers and pass on some of their power and knowledge. Skills in healing, sacred knowledge, psychic abilities, and medicinal plants are some of the gifts imparted to those chosen by the water spirits. These healers are the custodians of traditional knowledge. Healers and diviners who follow the calling become important mediators between the spirit world and their communities. This, however, requires access to and the preservation of sacred rivers, wetlands, and the sea, as to conduct rituals to aid communication with the spirit world. It follows that water is regarded among many African religious functionaries as a living force, with the power to transform people from one state to another, at a spiritual or physical level. It has the power to purify and protect one from evil, or to heal and bring one from illness to health, and is a vital element in the performance of many religious and healing rituals. Africa's ecology has had eons to adapt to the impacts of mankind. However, the more recent impacts resulting from demand for resources from the industrialization of the world, materialistic capitalism, population density, and now climate change are devastating. Across Africa, sacred areas long protected by traditional customs which restricted use or access have enjoyed protection and are now recognized as ecologically important areas in addition to being culturally significant. Environmental conservation is not a recent phenomenon in indigenous African communities. Past generations knew about the sustainable use of natural resources because religion permeates virtually all aspects of African life. Practices to protect special areas, species, and to ensure sustainable use of land and water found expression in religious rituals and practices. This is in keeping with the belief that all things were created by the Supreme Being for a harmonious continuity, and as such, there must be a relationship of mutual obligations between all created things. The traditional healers of the past collected bark or roots in a way that did not damage the plants, or if the entire plant was needed, they would not to harvest all the plants but leave some for the future. Sadly, traditions have been eroded and the demand for resources has increased. Middlemen who are not trained in the conservation methods of the past, or who are more concerned about short-term profits, often disregard the conservation taboos and sustainable harvesting practices of the past. A revisitation of the principles of traditional African religious practices would provide modern conservation programs in Africa and globally, with an insight into the activities of communities that manage to live alongside the rivers and forests and use them sustainably. Contemporary Africa would do well to borrow a leaf from traditional African spiritual beliefs to further environmental conservation for the well-being of humanity and out of respect for God's gift of creation.